I'm back, and so are you for part 3. We're doing disaccharides, so let's go ahead and get started. I gotta share my screen, or would it have shared? We're still learning all the nuances. All right, so part 3, disaccharides, and yeah, this is what you guys should be eating. Hopefully you've learned that. And what we're going to be talking about today in this hour is glycosidic bonds. So we're going to be linking two monosaccharides together. And so there's two ways you can do it. The linkage, this first linkage over here on the left is called an alpha linkage. And it's called alpha because it's pointing down. Also, the linkages get a number. So remember counting. You should have done your homework. Usually I do this after the first study set and quiz. And so that's why you had a study set and quiz due this first week so that you could hopefully flow with me through this slideshow. So next to this oxygen is the number 1 carbon. So we read these bonds from left to right. And so number 1 is linked to the number 4 carbon on this monosaccharide. So again, we would count here 1, 2, 3, 4. And the linkage is based on how the linkage looks. So it's pointing down from the 1 to the 4. We don't care how this one is. That does not determine our linkage at all. Over here, anybody want to guess? It is also 1 to 4. So this is carbon 1 and this is carbon 4, but it's pointing up like the birds and the bees and the butterflies. And so this is a beta linkage. So it's a beta 1,4. And the potato came in here because potatoes, you and I digest alpha 1,4. That's the big point of this, is alpha linkages we digest. And you and I definitely digest potatoes, starch. Beta 1,4, unless you have a little chainsaw in your stomach, you're not going to digest beta 1,4. Termites, they can digest beta 1,4, but you and I do not. All right, so we're going to go through 4 disaccharides. Like in the last one, we went through 4 monosaccharides, and so you do need to write down the name of each of these disaccharides, and you're going to need to know the type of linkage, and so I'll walk through that with each slide, and you need to know the 2 units. So it's a disaccharide because it's made up of 2 units. So glucose to glucose is maltose. Maltose is made up of 2 glucoses. So one of the things that makes it really easy to remember is that these always have a glucose and something else. All right, so maltose is the purpose or where you find it. That is the other thing you need to know about each of these. And you don't have to write this whole paragraph down. I was just curious because maltose is found in malted beverages. So in beer or malted milkshakes. And so I was curious, what does malting mean? And so malting is the drying of germinated grains with, and then hot air is applied to stop germination, and that's called malting. And so it develops enzymes that actually modify the starches. And so the starches we'll be talking about in the next slideshow. Starches are long polymers of glucose, and it cuts them, that malting process, breaks them into mono and disaccharides, and so specifically here into maltose. Also our stomach, or amylase, which is in our mouth, digests starches to maltose. All right, so the type of linkage, hopefully you're all saying, oh, come on, I've already written down. It's an alpha 1,4 because it's pointing down like the fish in the sea. So there's a 1 and it goes to the 4. All right, and that's just a picture of a malted milkshake in case you've never seen one. And oh, it is Easter time, so those robin eggs that many people like, they are malted milk inside. But hopefully you've all given up sugar for the month and have been inspired to do that, or to eat your apples every day. An apple a day keeps the doctor away is probably very true. All right, so this is not an alpha, this is beta because it's pointing up. So this is a beta 1,4, and this is called cellobiose. And so it is like maltose. It is made up of 2 glucose units. You don't need to recognize that's glucose. You would just need to remember cellobiose, or have it in your notes, is made up of glucose to glucose. But the difference is this is a beta linkage, and we don't digest beta linkages. So this would go right through us. Termites can. And so this would be found in wood. And you and I don't gnaw on wood usually. Or I'll speak for myself. I don't gnaw on wood. So the difference, alpha 1,4 and beta 1,4, and our body lacks enzymes for beta. Right. The third disaccharide is lactose, which is milk sugar. And you should already know what are going to be the 2 units, because all of our disaccharides, 1 unit is always glucose. And in this one, the 2nd unit is galactose. And so what do you think? Is the linkage going to be alpha or beta? Well, the key is, do we digest it? And this is a little controversial for some people. As infants, we do have the enzyme, but as we move into mature adults, we no longer have the enzyme, and so we do not actually digest it. And so there is lactose, and ASE is the name for the enzyme. OSE is the name of carbohydrate, and you can see it definitely has a beta linkage, and it digests into galactose and glucose, which again are disastomers. They're both these hexagons, and they just differ here at the number 4. So it is a beta 1,4 made up of galactose and glucose, and it comes from milk sugar. That is what you need to remember. So lactose, just talk about for a moment, the monosaccharides again are glucose and galactose. And again, there's a picture of it, and the linkage type is beta 1,4, and this just talks about lactose intolerance. And so lactose intolerance is that we as adults have either completely lack the enzyme or have insufficient amounts. Undigested lactose, then it passes through us and it pulls water into our intestines, which is called osmosis, and that causes bloating and diarrhea because you now have all this extra water in there. In the lower intestines, bacteria start to digest the lactose. They're going, oh, what is this? And they produce these gases, and these gases then create more bloating, cramping, and gas. And it is the #1 cause of flatulence. It is not a life-threatening condition. It is a very uncomfortable. And many people say, oh no, I'm not lactose intolerant, until they give up milk. And you have to give up milk for, you can do it for your healthy change if you haven't found one. And it is all dairy. And then if you bring it back, you go, oh, wow, did I always feel like that? And yeah, you probably did. All right. You will feel so much better. We are the only species that drinks milk from another one. Cats do not normally do that. And there we go. You don't want to be like the unicorn. All right. Our 4th disaccharide is sucrose, which is table sugar. It comes from sugar beets and sugar cane. And it is an interesting, you can recognize it is definitely a disaccharide. It's made up of 2 units, and one of them is glucose. Glucose would be our hexagon. And this is a pentagon, this is fructose. And that is why sucrose is so sweet, because it is made up of glucose plus fructose. Now this linkage is an interesting linkage. It is an alpha 1 coming from glucose, but it's hooking into the beta linkage of fructose. So it's table sugar, sugar cane and sugar beets, glucose and fructose, and it's highly refined. But this linkage is an alpha 1 to a beta 2. It's kind of unusual, but there we go. There's an ad straight from the sugar industry that shows, hey, let's load up. I used to do this when we were kids. This is how my mom got us to eat our grapefruit. And then you become hyperactive. So let's look at some statistics about our sugar intake. Isn't that a beautiful cupcake? And to get that color, this is just loaded with artificial everything and refined sugar. So in 1900, 120 years ago, 80% of US calories were not sugar, they were carbohydrates. 75% of our diet was complex carbohydrates, which is our next talk. In the year 2000, 40% of US calories were now carbohydrates. And then the low carb fads come along and tell us to cut it down even more, of which over 50% of these carbohydrates are now simple carbohydrates, meaning highly refined. And do you think in the next 20 years it got any better? Probably it got even worse. And so most in third world countries and developing countries, their calories are still coming from carbohydrates. And so while they still have diseases that are highly infectious diseases, they don't have the same heart disease and other. That's my puppy. I'll see a picture of her eventually in the slideshow. All right, added sweetener per capita sugar consumption. So usually I show this as a demo and I actually pour out the amount of sugar. In 1830, 7.5 pounds or 2 cubes was how much a person would take in a day. So sugar was a very special commodity to have. It was very hard to come by it. In 2000, so 170 years later, the average intake is 45 cubes a day. 45 cubes. That's a lot. That's a huge increase. And yeah, so there's a lot of interesting history in there that I'm sure you could look into. And the movies talk about a lot of the stuff that starts happening here. So sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, we talked about. This is per person. 19 teaspoons per day. Might seem like, hey, it's less than it was, but it's because that's just the sucrose. If you take all the sugars together, it's still increasing. And we're not the worst, so hooray, the USA is not number one. So Japan is one of the lowest countries. France, here's the US. And then Australia, they have quite the sweet tooth, but they are not the sweetest of them all. So this is fascinating. This is who takes sugar in. And there are these countries here that love their sugar too, but it's the next slide that looks at the sweetest tooth. And there is a more recent video that came out that showed what countries have the most diabetes. And we're number 17. It's hard to believe, but it was countries in the Middle East. And I actually had a gal in my class in the fall, and she said, oh, my country's number one, and she was from Iran. And it is like Kuwait and a lot of these countries. Saudi Arabia has a huge issue because they have a lot of money, they have a lot of free time. And when we went over there, the first war in Kuwait, we brought soda over. The other hotspot is the Pacific Ocean. These people have serious issues with their sweet tooth. Singapore, I think it's on the next slide. So these are the countries that take in the most. And so I know the top one's Brazil. So Brazilian men consume the most sugar in the world. 40 teaspoons. It's huge. And this is Malaysia and Singapore. And Singapore is Indonesia is the fastest growing. Chinese women consume the least. And so this is China, and Chinese women, I think it's actually half of that, or at least 6, which is what the recommendation is for everyone in the world. These other 2 that were low, this is Japan, and this is India. So this relates to all of you. 15 to 19-year-olds are the biggest consumers in the United States. Probably has to do with Starbucks, maybe, maybe not. And then sales of sugary drinks. This is crazy, right? These numbers. Mexico, what's up with all the sugary drinks there? All right, this is per person, per day. It's pretty crazy. Healthy kids are sweet enough. This is from the American Heart Association. This is their recommendation that kids between the age of 2 to 18 to keep their heart healthy, 6 teaspoons or less. Oh, and then the World Health Organization, it's so confusing. They're like, no more than 12 teaspoons. And they even tell you how much is that one soda. Who drinks a little can of soda anymore? 8.5 teaspoons. So you've already surpassed the American Heart Association. I don't know if you remember from the third slide I had, 1 in 1,000 children in our country consume under 12 teaspoons of sugar per day. 0.1% actually meet the WHO requirement. Do you want to guess how many actually meet the American Heart Association requirement? How many of you do? And it's not that you're putting sugar in your coffee, which you should not be. It is all the hidden sugar. Oh, look at the energy drinks. I think that's what our next slide is. So the average consumption, and it's these. It is your drinks. And if you've watched those movies yet, they all talk about that. The average American, 533 sodas per year. I don't drink soda, so other people are drinking my share of them. And I think they started including in the sodas now, iced tea, everything that has all that sugar added. So let's look at it. Mountain Dew, that was in one of the videos that they look at the consumption in that one area. I think it was Tennessee, and how much Mountain Dew and the Monster drinks. Even this, the vitamin water. I know I used to buy Joey vitamin water when we went to the store when he was little, and my mom's like, did you ever look at the label? And then that stopped. And then here we go. Look at this, the cranberry, 17.5. Down here is numbers for how much people are taking in. So boys ages 12 to 19 are taking in 108 gallons per year. That would be 2 gallons a week. That's a quart a day, right? Am I doing my math? There's 4 quarts in a gallon. That's a quart a day. That's more than a quart a day that they're chugging. Who is buying this much? And you know, you go in and you don't buy just one Monster drink because it's always buy 2, get 1 free or something. I don't know. I've never had one of those. And girls, really, the thing that's scary is these 2 to 5-year-olds. That's pretty much almost a gallon a week these kids are drinking. Just like all it is sugar. There's absolutely no use to it. So there's this in your house, just stop drinking, stop buying it. Nobody's going to miss it. You might hear complaints and whining for the first day, and then they get over it. And don't substitute juice for it. Just drink water. Just drink water. Or hot tea that you make yourself. Not this tea, not the Snapple lemon iced tea. Oh, you're like, no, I don't drink any of that. Oh, let's look at black coffee has no sugar and fat. But look at this. And this is not even the grande. So that's Starbucks addiction. Yeah, the pumpkin spice latte. I did this in the fall, so that's why I had this. So the same amount as these. It's pretty scary. So maybe that's what you're going to have to do, is give up drinking all your Starbucks coffee and go to black. I had somebody did this, and they said it took them. They had to slowly wean themselves off the sugar and get to the point where they could have black coffee, or black coffee with maybe a little bit of real milk, not that fake milk. And this is just reminding us of the hidden sugar. So it's not just in the soda. I have a slide in the next one talking about cereals, have quite a bit of hidden. And this is Cheerios, multi-grain. So you see the word multi-grain, you're like, woohoo. So the kid has half a box of multi-grain. Is that what it is? No, this is a serving. Okay. 40 grams in a serving. So almost 2 sugar cubes. But it's this one. It's the yogurt that we talked about. All right. Kids, 5 or 6 sugar cubes a day. And these things are all exceeding it. So we go through the vortex and we find Save the Children International. These are those groups that you give money to. And you give them your hard-earned dollars. They are a leader in pushing for higher taxes on sodas. Oh, or they were. Until, yeah, they wanted a soda tax. They received a $5 million grant from Pepsi. And you know what? Coca-Cola said, we cannot let them outdo us. So we will match that. Give you another $5 million. See, you and I give $5, $10, $50 maybe, and how can you compare to this? Yeah, some people have been sending in, they've actually started watching the videos, and that's awesome, and that's what I want, is that it opens your eyes. But this was really cool. This was last year, spring break, the day I got back, so a year ago. Such a difference a year can make. And so just imagine what will be next year. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Heart Association announced that they endorse taxes on sugary drinks and restrictions to marketing to kids and incentives. And the reason what was driving this is the World Bank supports this. So it might actually happen. And it's because the World Bank did an analysis, computer analysis, and they realized this is going to bankrupt the world. This, not that virus. We're going to get over that. And we're all going to bond together. And we got to do the same for this. Because these kids are going to be diabetic before they're 20. And they're going to not be able to work because of illnesses and overwhelm our hospitals and stuff. All right, so this is from a book I read. Michael Moss, he actually is in one of the videos. He might be in 2 of them, I believe. But, you know, everybody likes what it's called, the bliss point. It's the Goldilocks. It's the perfect one. And so what Dr. Howard Moskowitz is talking about is there is this lab in Philadelphia, and they bring people in, and they have made the cereal, and each bowl of the cereal has a different amount of sugar, and they have you taste. And you get to one, you're like, I like the one before it. And they test enough people until they figure out everybody likes this bowl of cereal, and that's how much sugar they put in. And that's called the Goldilocks. And we each have one. As a kid, you each have a favorite cereal that you absolutely loved. And then as an adult, and I know some of you in your early 20s, you're not quite there yet. There is a point where your sweet tooth becomes a different sweet tooth. And you go back, you have one of those days, and you just go and you're like, I don't care what Dr. Sherpa said. I got to have, mine was Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries because I have a pink thing. And I went and bought, I was at Duke and I had one of those days, and I went and got my Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries, and I took one bite and I was like, what is this? I mean, it was pure sugar and cardboard. It tasted like cardboard with sugar on it, which is probably pretty much what it is. But you all have your favorite. Was it Apple Jacks or Fruit Loops? Sugar is as addictive as cocaine, according to brain scans. I think we saw a picture in the last slideshow. And this is a brain scan showing this is a person who doesn't have eating disorders, and this is a person who becomes, and we can all become addicted. To say you cannot become addicted, oh, you're lying to yourself. Just like cocaine is extremely addictive, so is sugar. And that is one of the things in those movies that they actually do talk about. And it's all around us, right? So you would go and there's all these bakeries, and they're so beautiful. And like the church, when we were going to church, there was this sweet lady, and she'd make these beautiful cookies, and she'd say, oh, but I don't use sugar. And she would use, I don't remember what she used, but those are the Sweet Lips. And that's showing me, this is probably the last time I had an ice cream. It was 5 years ago. And I had not had one for a while before that, but this is at Penn State. I hadn't been there for 29 years. That's where my undergrad was. And the creamery there is actually where Ben and Jerry were trained back in the 70s. And they actually stole their Cherry Garcia from Penn State. Penn State had a better cherry ice cream. The day we were there, we did not have that option. So I went for Death by Chocolate. Joey got a raspberry one because I would not let him get the same one as me because we shared. But all right, so in a year, kids eat more than 10 pounds of sugar just from breakfast cereal. Just from breakfast cereal. You might as well, if you're buying this for them. So Environmental Working Group analyzed over 1,500 cereals. 181, only 181 are specifically marketed to kids, like Fruit Loops. I feel like it's got to be more than that, but, and this is their Hall of Shame. Over 50%, so 56% by weight is just sugar, and the other is cardboard. So Honey Smacks, Anything that says honey, unfortunately, does not have honey. It's just lots of sugar. And high fructose corn syrup is actually the scary part here. And golden puffs. Again, the puffed ones are 50% more, means 50% more sugar. Oh, and this was a good one too, because it's puffed. But it says it's mom's best, and mom's best, she would take care of you. 56% sugar by weight. Oh, and the winner, anybody want to guess? So a lot of students guess Trix. This is again where I need that live stream so you can all be putting it in. I didn't know what Dora was, but a lot of students will say Trix. I've had some people say Fruit Loops. I was sure it was Lucky Charms because I thought it was the little marshmallows, and I used to eat all the rest and leave the marshmallows there floating. Oh, it is not. It was actually Lieber's Cocoa Frosted Flakes. 88% sugar. There's Mrs. Lieber. She just loves her sugar. 88%. We could not find it in the store. We did a class with the kids, and I sent my people out to try to find it. I think it's sold in the South. Remember that area that was extremely has issues with obesity more than anywhere else in the country. So let's talk about the alternatives. How about aspartame and sucralose? So you still have lots of time to pick your topic, but maybe you're somebody who thinks, yeah, I use the artificial sweeteners. Then you should pick one of these as your topic, because that will get you off of them, because there is nothing good about these. They are artificial. This is the rat from Joey's presentation last term, and this rat is very nervous. The aspartame studies, yeah, the rats died. And then they falsified the reports. And 2 weeks later, the rats were alive. It's like the reports were so awful. They're self-regulated. This one's my favorite, is Splenda, sucralose. So this is sugar. This is what it looks like. This is our hexagon to pentagon, so glucose to fructose. And what they did is they took off a couple of the OHs and they put chlorines on. So you're putting a halogen, chlorine, highly reactive, highly oxidizing potential into your body. And they said, oh, you won't absorb it. But it turns out the studies show not so good. The weirdest part about both of these, they were not trying to make a sweetener. In both cases, they were trying to make something else. Somebody got the chemical on their fingers and licked their fingers. The rat is thinking, oh, this is not good. Aspartame is in everything. This is how sweet these are. So if you give sucrose a rating of 1, fructose, straight fructose is a little bit sweeter, so high fructose corn syrup, but no comparison to these guys down here. And they're no calories. They're no good, period. They're like 200 times sweeter. Saccharin's the pink one, equals aspartame, ACE K. I don't even know what that is. But aspartame is highly soluble. You just need a little bit, and it became the sweetener of choice for everything. Everything was aspartame. Now it's actually usually ACE K. There are different things in there, sucralose, and it is so unhealthy. NutraSweet especially was shown to bring up really unusual brain tumors. And if you've never seen this picture, this is a sugar lollipop. That was aspartame. And ants do not go around things unless they know. They know. They're smart. You know what else ants know? They haven't shown up in my house yet. So usually I tell this story because they've shown up by now, but they haven't. But they know when there's going to be an earthquake. So I should be telling the story because we haven't seen them yet. And they hide in the ground. And so when the big tsunamis happen in Indonesia, all the animals, the elephants and everything, a week before go to higher ground. So they actually know. The ants probably go too. So when your elephant, remember that elephant in the kitchen, heads for the hills, you should follow him. I had a student who told that story, and she said, but the mountains here are volcanic. I said, just follow the elephants. They know where it's safe. So that elephant in your kitchen. Oh, let's talk about the microbiome, because those artificial sweeteners, your microbiome, microbiota, is half of the cells in your body, just possibly a little bit over half, are bacterial. And they are good guys. They're on our skin and they're in our gut. And Here we go. This is a little bit happier rat. Not really. The standard American diet has long-term terrible things. Look how unhappy these guys are. They are just like, oh, this is not good. And so this is a study. I had a student talk about. These studies actually are only a couple years old, although these sweeteners were out for a long time. So the microbiome, our microbiota, actually regulates our weight control and our glucose metabolism. Saccharin and ACE-K, two different artificial sweeteners, alter the gut microbiota, inducing glucose intolerance. So by the way, the microbiome is the genome, the DNA of all the bacteria is called the microbiome. The microbiota is the actual cells, the actual bacteria. Microbiome just flows off the tongue. So they're not exactly the same thing, but for our purposes, but a clarification when I go back and forth. All right, saccharin and ACE-K alter the gut microbiota, inducing glucose intolerance. The mice that were fed artificial sweeteners actually gained weight, and humans do too. They actually find they do not decrease, they actually often increase their consumption of calories. Analysis of feces of the mice, I'm assuming, suggested chronic inflammation of the gut. You know, this is not what you want to do when you go on to graduate school, is be the person who has to analyze the feces of the rats. But apparently they have chronic inflammation. And probably all of you know somebody who has chronic inflammation of the gut. We don't usually talk about it. And changes to the neurochemistry. And more lipogenesis, which means making fat. Genesis means to create fat. Lipids are fat. So your microbiome, what's it want to eat? It wants to eat fiber. So you don't want an unhealthy, unhappy. You want a happy, jiggly. Feed it fiber. I have more on this in the next slideshow because that's when we do. Another thing about our microbiome, it communicates with our immune system. This is important. This is really important right now. So our microbiome stays healthy. We have a healthy immune system. It determines our response and recovery to cancer, inflammation, and wellness, such as the common cold. Our microbiome does. Fascinating. It determines our longevity. We live in a symbiotic relationship. So we protect them from the outside and they feed us. And I have more on that. They create our B vitamins. And we've been destroying it because we've been eating such a crappy diet. All right, there's areas of the globe that apparently have no contact with anyone else, these ancient tribes who are still going about life as usual right now, and their microbiome has bacteria that has not been seen by anyone else on this planet in a long time because their diet has not changed. You can change it back. It takes time, but change your gut by changing your diet, not by taking pills. Prebiotics and probiotics don't work the same because if your diet's so crappy, nothing's going to happen. And those prebiotics and probiotic pills, they have 1, 2, 3 different types of bacteria. You have hundreds, thousands of different types of bacteria. So some of the things, cranberries and pomegranates. I got a really awesome book last year that I read during spring break, and then a lot of these slides have stuff from it. And I can't remember the name of the book right now. But I love cranberries and pomegranates and nuts. Your microbiome loves it. Whenever you see these slides on feeding your microbiome, they love fiber. And so, yeah, you don't want a sad microbiome. Smoking also no good. You want to feed them fiber, the apple, the broccoli. All right, let's talk about other no-calorie but natural sweeteners. So stevia, I've had people pick this as their topic because they were really into stevia. It comes from Latin and South America. It is a plant. I've tried to grow it in my yard, but we'd have then the snow apocalypse that happened a couple years ago, and that ended that. I should probably try growing it in my sunroom. but it is about 25 times sweeter. So a teaspoon is the same as a cup of sucrose, and it helps to regulate blood sugar amongst other stuff. The FDA, it's controversial to them, but it's not controversial to the rest of the world. And then there's xylitol. So a lot of you are going dental hygiene, so you're probably familiar with xylitol. It's given out in all the dental offices. Xylitol does bind to dental bacteria and decreases cavities. And it does also regulate blood glucose. So it can be a really cool topic. There is always a downside. I don't know much about the downside for stevia, but when you do your topic, you want to look at pros and cons. I mean, you know, you might be very pro stevia, but there are some questions about it. A lot of these things, the question is how much was being taken in. And same issue with xylitol, a small amount. So one piece of gum a day that you're chewing is fine, but it causes bloating. So same thing with lactose. Your body, it makes your taste bud think, oh, sweetness, and your body doesn't absorb it. And so your intestines just start absorbing water to try to flush this out because it doesn't know what it is. And you become bloated and it's uncomfortable. All right, are there healthier choices than even those? Oh, you betcha, I think there are. So I don't know, sugar in the raw, some people will use that. It's really only like, it does have some of the natural, since it's not processed, it does have some minerals still in it. There's better. Barley malt is going to be maltose, and it is considered a whole food. I went on a kick with that for a short time. Joey's first birthday cake was made with maltose, and I never made a birthday cake with it again. It is not very sweet, so if we give sucrose the number 1 as sweetness, maltose gets a 0.3. And I don't like the taste of it. Hi, Rocky. That's my cat. And so maple syrup. This is not maple syrup. This is high fructose corn syrup. So when we can go back to the store again, so usually most of my students go shopping this next week and they spend 2 hours. I tell them to go without the kids and they start going, oh my gosh, I can't eat all the stuff in my, so you guys can start cleaning out your kitchen pantry now. This is high fructose corn syrup. There is no maple syrup. It does cost more, so just get rid of it. Throw it out. This does cost more, but it is amazing. And I forget now the story behind how they found the first maple syrup, but it was like they saw either a bug or birds on this tree and they couldn't figure out why, and that's when they started realizing the sap was so amazing. But it has vitamins and minerals with it. I don't have any right now. I use blackstrap molasses. I don't use very much. I use what's on the next slide. And then I always add either a little bit, like a teaspoon to a tablespoon. I don't actually measure it, of either blackstrap molasses, which is really high in iron and some other vitamins, or maple syrup, because it actually helps to pull out all the other flavors. So it's just a little bit of it, but that is considered a good source. When I was iron deficient, that was one of the things they tell you because it's high in iron. But to make ginger snaps, yeah, I use black, and I usually make them for a class. I realized today I'm not getting to make treats for all of you. This is agave, which is high. It has a lot of fructose in it, but it is considered a natural sweetener. What I think is actually the only sweetener that you should use, and it is what I use now, is dates. And dates, the whole date has fiber, and so the sugar is bound to the fiber. Not all of it, but a significant amount. And because of the fiber, you don't get the sugar flush. Date sugar is highly processed. You don't have fiber, and so that is not the same thing. So that is a misconception out there. And then I actually soak my dates. So you can soak them in, I soak them in coffee and black coffee because I actually love the taste of coffee. And then you get a little bit of that coffee flavor in your muffins or whatever it is you're making. Yeah. All right. Coffee is a cool topic too. So I think I have 3 more slides. This is chitin. And this is a derivative. This is a modified oligosaccharide. So there is a question, I think, on one of your homework sets. So a monosaccharide is 1 unit, a disaccharide is 2 units, and oligosaccharide means a few. I don't really know what a few means, maybe 6 to 15-ish. It's not an exact number, But the thing about chitin is it has a modified, so these are glucoses, and then it gets modified. You don't really need to remember this. You would, if you saw this picture, have to be able to tell me this is a beta linkage because it's pointing up from 1 to 4, and it is the shell. That's why we have the crab here. It is what makes the hard shell. So these nitrogen side groups, you guys do remember, John? You do remember N stands for nitrogen, I hope. All right. Something else from 104 you're supposed to remember. But it's what gives them that hard shell, or hardish, soft hardish shell. All right, another one that's cool is a modified sugar, oligosaccharide, is something called hyaluronic acid. And I've often had somebody, I've had almost every term somebody pick this as their topic. This is, see the glucuronic acid, this and glucosamine. This is why a lot of people with knee and joint pain take glucosamine. It is part of this molecule that is the lubrication in all your joints. This is also a lubricant in your eyes, and cat eyes are pretty amazing. And it holds water, and it is what makes your skin look hydrated. And so all skincare products now have hyaluronic acid. And so if you have a skincare product, you can pause me and go look at it, or tonight when you're doing your beauty routine at night, you can look, and it will have hyaluronic acid in it. The highest source of hyaluronic acid is this. The slime from the slug or the snail is hyaluronic acid, and it is slimy. There you go. That's hyaluronic acid. I don't know if this is real. These are not edible mushrooms. I'll talk about mushrooms on the next slideshow. Snail slime has taken off in Asia as a beauty treatment. You actually go, well, I don't know if you do it right now. I don't know if these places are open right now, but they put slugs, snails on your face, and they just ooze you up with hyaluronic acid. These people say it is the most amazing moisturizing. Hyaluronic acid is naturally found in our skin, and it holds on to water. So that's, again, a picture. Remember I said sometimes you'll see the hexagon squished, the elephant stepped on them. Hyaluronic acid absorbs the water you drink, and it gives your skin a more vibrant, plumper, healthier look. I had fun making this slide because we have to play with purples and pinks. So those are water molecules, and so it's going to hold on to them. Just a side note, bee venom is also given to some people because it has a Botox-like effect. And so it makes the skin, yeah. And then some people do inject it. So which would you do for plumper skin? Would you cover yourself with bees? Or would you put, look at the size, look how beautiful that snail is. Or would you just drink more water? Give up soda, drink water. Don't want plumper skin. This dog, he's so cute. And that's it. I will see you in the next one. How do I end? Stop share. Sorry. Goodbye.